But then you got that, we'll call it tough love. And it was
Mhm.
such a cool quote. You're good at a lot of things, but not great at one thing, So really
Yep.
a call to focus from your greatest mentor at the time.
Yep.
And yeah, okay. So then there's one thing to get advice. There's another thing to act on it. So walk through that, because the story of you getting into and identifying self-storage as an actual sector that was the smart next move, the focus. How did you come up with that, and what was the formula? Once you knew you had to pivot, how did you formulate what that pivot was going to be?
For sure. Well, I think the biggest thing is finding a business plan that fits you and your passions. Don't swim against the tide too much. Just find something that works. And the other thing, so I made a list of what I needed. Well, I needed something that I was good at and something I had a knack in, and it was real estate. That was the first things I did, and it was every time I did it, those were the biggest wins in the past. I knew it would be real estate. And then the next thing was I needed something scalable. Talking to all these billionaires, they say, and asking these billionaires to invest and them telling me no for those first years. The biggest reason was, Andrew, you have nothing scalable. So scalable was on my list. It needs to be scalable. When I say scalable, I mean like multi-billions. The other thing was it needed to be, I wanted to develop something. I wanted to make my own problems, as Gary would say. I didn't want to buy somebody else's problem. And so I wanted to develop, and I wanted it to be printable. Printable and scalability are kind of go hand in hand. And the reason I wanted to develop is there's so many efficiencies. I'm a big believer in vertical integration, kind of like John D. Rockefeller and Henry Ford and all these guys, doing research in the past. So I knew I wanted to have my own construction company, my materials, equipment company. I wanted all these things. So development was where it's at. And then I realized that, hey, I like people, don't get me wrong. Like, I love this, but gosh, it's hard to get employees. And I knew that time it was hard. And I kept reading it was going to be harder and harder to get people in this world. And I don't think it's going to get easier. So I said, I want something that doesn't take much staff. Like, for example, hotels, Gary's got 3,000 employees. He's got 30 people per hotel. So per $25 million in assets, he has 30 people. So I'll call it almost 800 grand to $1 million asset per person. And I'm just like, God, that's a lot, right? That's a lot of people. So I
Mm-hmm.
started doing research on that. And then I also knew the baby boomers, and I was doing research on Amazon and drop shipping and what's coming. I said, well, drop shipping is growing at a very amazing clip, and it's continuing to grow. And I'm a believer in it. I think that is the future, and it's already here. It's not even the future, but it'll grow. So that led me into assisted living and self-storage. It was down to those two things. And so I brought it to Gary and a couple mentors. And I said, here's this assisted living. And I said, but here's storage. And here was my pitch on storage. I said, self-storage has been around a long time. But I said, self-storage 10, 15 years ago started to become beautiful. Class A, 3-story, looks more like a hotel in major cities on 2 acres. But here's the most unique thing. Gary started hotels in the 80s, and he didn't build Therrelson hotels. He built started out with Super 8s, but then he eventually got into the Marriotts and all the big brands, right? It's always about the brand. Well, storage in 2017, that was the first year in history that Extra Space Storage allowed people to use their brand and still own the building. They would brand it, manage it, and do all of it so you could use the brand. And that's what happened in the 80s. And Gary
Mm.
embraced it. Before the 80s, it was Jeff's Hotels, Bob's Hotel. Gary came in, embraced the brands, consolidated a fragmented industry, and became a billionaire. And Gary and I both, and many people believe that is storage today. I think storage is, it not think, it is. It's 85 to 90% mom and pop owned still today. And I came in, I was one of the first 200 or 100 to sign up to use the big brands, own the building, develop it, build it, make all the money, and then just own it. And I don't have any employees. I guess we have 50 employees in our vertical companies, but we don't have any management.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes 1.5 to 2 employees per 20 million in asset. So now I'm talking 10 million per employee instead of 800,000. So I'll
Wow.
stop there. You may have some questions, but that's the gist.
No, man, that's exactly the story. We've talked about that before, and I think it's so interesting that I want to speak to the filter aspect, the criteria, because there's a lot of people we've talked to, investors, they start shooting the shotgun around and saying, well, let's do everything and squirrel here and shiny object there. and that just hadn't served you. Well, it had served you for a while, but it caused the trip up. And then you're saying, I'm going to get focused. I got great advice. I'm going to make my list. Scalability, develop something. Vertical integration, real quick tidbit on vertical integration. Can you dive into what that meant to you? Because some people might not have heard that terminology before.
Yeah, for sure. So like Henry Ford, for example, he built vehicles and he wanted to figure out how to make the products he puts in it. So like he started a tire factory across seas so he could have his own tires. Or look at Andrew Carnegie for steel. He started his own ore mine. He bought that so that he could supply his own ore to his steel companies. Basically, you buy up the line of products you need instead of buying them from other people. So for us, I thought to myself, well, easy thing is a construction company. So we started that. So instead of paying someone else $500,000 general contracting fee per site, we pay ourselves. And then we started a garage door company. I mean, we're buying 10,000 garage doors next year alone for our facilities. So I said, let's buy that. So we'll make another $1.1 million in profits next year just on garage doors. I wanted to have our own equipment dealership. Everything's got equipment on it. So we bought a dealership in Great Falls, Montana, supply all of our own equipment. And then I've got a lot more ideas like solar and anything we can do. I mean, my goal is these buildings cost 12 to 15 million to build. My goal is to build them for, 20% less. So before we even open the doors, we make a few million per building. Well, if we're doing 10, 12 a year, we're making 25 million bucks a year before the doors open. How do you compete with that?
Yeah, that's good, man. And that's what your vision was when you went out and were trying to find this. So that was a major component, and it's when you lay it out like that, Andrew, it makes complete sense. I encourage viewers and our audience right now to think of what are ways you can get your arms around some of the different aspects of what you're doing, whether you're running a small business or whether you're getting into the real estate investing game. Us, for example, we had the same experience, Andrew, when we're running our rental property company. We're dealing with a lot of renters. We're dealing with a lot of management. What was the next move for us? It was property management. It was, it's insurance, the insurance game. We're insuring many buildings. There's some amazing thoughts to that go under that name of vertical integration and the scalability. Like the opportunities are endless. You're just continuing to add to the fire there. So, and not to mention raising money is easy when you explain it that way.
Oh yeah. People love it. And and what I always tell people is, because it can be overwhelming a little bit at the start. So what I tell people is, just draw a roadmap of your business. So for example, for me, I said, I need to be building X amount a year to open a construction company because you need to have so much volume. And I've got goals like, right now we're doing like 100 to 150 million a year in development ownership. I have in my mind, I have a roadmap saying, okay, my peak efficiency in my mind is getting to 12 a year. So I want to open one new Class A facility every month. And that'll be about $250 million a year in cost annually in development. And there's a couple companies that I can open then, not now, but then, right now we pay for our garage doors that we sell to be installed. But when we're doing one a month, we'll have enough volume to be our own installation company and save another, $1 million, $2 million a year. So my point is draw a roadmap. If it's not today, it's okay, but know when it's going to be. Know where you have to get to.
That's huge. And I want to jump into the aspect that you said about employees too. I mean, there's such wisdom behind the fact of like, hey, the labor market's getting more and more picked over. It's harder and harder to find good people. And so that was a unique problem you had to solve, and you landed on storage. And so when you brought that idea to kind of cap your entrance into storage, you brought that idea to Gary. It aligned with how he had done things with the hotel industry, and finally kind of got the nod. Everybody was kind of starting to nod their heads, and that was like, okay, I'm doing this. But you had never done it before, but you're doing this.
Yeah, and he's quick, which I love. He's in his book, he'll say, one of his talents or one of his secrets to success is he can make decisions quickly. So when I sat, and I had many things I brought to him, and all of them were like, I sat there, we were having pie at the Village Inn in Fargo, and I told him this, and he said, "That Andrew, that's your $1 billion idea." That's what he told me, that breakfast, or pie dining, whatever you want to call it. And I ran with it really hard.
Oh man.